Barry Bonds is the most game-breaking player to ever step in the batter's box. He was so extraordinary that he holds the all-time home run record, the all-time walks record, the single-season OPS record, and was so feared that he was once intentionally walked in the 9th inning with the bases loaded. But 18 years after retiring, he is not only remembered for that, he is remembered for punching his teammates, fighting with the media, getting blackballed by all MLB teams after offering to play for the league minimum, taking more juice than a Mr. Olympia candidate, and being described by one reporter as evil incarnate. This is the story of how baseball's most epic superstar became an infamous supervillain. A supervillain origin story that begins all the way back in childhood when Barry was just a young kid trying to live up to an impossibly large family name. Bonds was essentially born into baseball royalty. His father, Bobby Bonds, was an all-star and 3-time Gold Glove winner with the San Francisco Giants, and his godfather, Willie Mays, was practically the godfather of baseball itself. With Reggie Jackson also attending Thanksgiving dinner as his cousin, baseball talent was practically flowing through Barry's blood.
I noticed it with Barry when he was little, when the day he started walking. And he would always have some bat or some ball in his hand, and anybody that came to the house had to play ball.
Barry was essentially born to be the greatest player of all time, and as a young boy, he very well might have been. In high school, he hit close to 500 over 4 seasons, which quickly earned him a scholarship at Arizona State, where he dominated. But just because he was a god-tier college prospect doesn't mean that his villain origin story hadn't begun yet. As possibly the best high schooler in the country, Barry didn't even make the California High School All-Star team because he fell asleep in the bullpen in the middle of the tryout, and the Arizona State head coach admitted that he, quote, never saw any of Barry's teammates actually care about it. To add even more fuel to the fire, while playing in center field, Bonds once ran off the field and paused the game for nearly 10 minutes so he could take a dump. And as a sophomore, his coach asked the team to vote on whether or not they should kick Barry off the team, expecting them all to vote no, yet literally every single one of them except for 2 voted yes. Probably the only reason he was able to remain is because he was just so goddamn talented. During his 3 seasons with the Arizona State Sun Devils, Bonds hit .347 with 45 homers, batted in 175 runs, and led the team to back-to-back College World Series appearances. Bonds was slugging homers harder than Babe Ruth slugged beers. And with his draft stock as high as it would ever be, the Pittsburgh Pirates selected him 6th overall in the 1985 MLB draft. The minors were child's play for Barry, and after only 1 season in the farm system, he was promoted to the majors where he completely broke out. Barry won a Gold Glove, Silver Slugger Award, and MVP at only 25 years old. And with him guiding the Pirates like a North Star, they were quickly emerging as one of the best teams in the league. One might think his teammates would love him for this, but according to the press, his teammates actually hated him. Bonds once flipped a pizza into another teammate's face while flying on the team plane, and infamously got into an altercation with teammate Andy Van Slyke, which led to punches being thrown, where apparently all of the team took Andy's side and joined in on throwing punches towards Bonds. Bonds' attitude was his own worst enemy, but it was also what made him the most complete player of the decade. From ages 24 to 27, he won 3 Silver Sluggers, 2 MVPs, 3 Gold Gloves, led the league in OPS almost every season, and averaged 8.6 WAR. For context, Bryce Harper is one of the greatest players of the current era and only has 8.4 WAR over the past 2 seasons. Barry had an 8.6 WAR season average and wasn't even taking steroids yet. Barry could have been the most loved player ever, but he wasn't, because the stat he was really leading the league in most was in being public enemy number 1. In 1992, at 27 years old, Bonds was vocal that he was being underpaid. And despite being under contract for another 2 seasons, he told the media that if his team didn't pay him at least $3 million, he would, quote, haunt the Pittsburgh Pirates forever. The Pirates didn't agree to Bonds' Andrew Tate level negotiation tactics, which frustrated him immeasurably. His frustration was justified though. His teammate Andy Van Slyke was far less productive and got a $4.3 million payday that year, yet instead of explaining this hypocrisy through words, according to one account, Bonds proceeded to fight the team's general manager during his arbitration hearing. Tensions between Bonds and the team were higher than during the Cold War, and in spring training, they exploded like a nuclear bomb. Bonds started screaming at media personnel filming him, argued with his coaches, and even got ripped to shreds by his manager Jim Leland.
That's why, man. So let's get the with right. I don't want to see it no more.
This firestorm made Bonds look as bad as ever, and it essentially gave the press an invitation to dig up every horrible rumor ever said about him. Barry Bonds was the reigning MVP at this point, the greatest player in the league, and yet he was thought of as a supervillain worse than Thanos or Darth Vader. It didn't help either that anytime Barry was in the postseason, he became an entirely different player. Bonds batted 167 and 148 in the 1990 and 1991 playoffs, and famously couldn't clutch up, only 1 out away from the 1992 World Series. With all the controversy, the media made it seem like Barry's stock value was as low as the Great Depression, even though it wasn't at all. It was arguably the highest it had ever been. Bonds signed with the Giants to start the 1993 season with the biggest contract ever seen at the time. Barry had 43.75 million reasons over 6 years to try and reinvent himself into a stand-up guy, and he said he was going to try, but in reality, the controversies he faced in Pittsburgh were about to seem like child's play. In Giants spring training, it was reported that Bonds punched a Padres outfielder in the face. Soon after, an adult actress sued him, claiming that Bonds got her pregnant, all while he was going through a horrible divorce, more public than Bill and Melinda Gates. It got even worse. Bonds was accused of domestic violence by his ex-wife, and even though he was the Pirates' best player only 1 season prior, when he returned to Pittsburgh in 1993, the fans booed him and threw fake dollar bills on the field. According to one report, when Barry tried to say hello to his old teammates, they completely ignored him like he was Bruce Willis at the end of Sixth Sense. Bonds was crushing just as many home runs as heinous allegations at this point, and even though he batted .336 with a 1.136 OPS in 1993, winning his already 3rd MVP at only 28, all anyone wanted to talk about was how much of an asshole he was. Everything boiled over in 1996 when it was reported that he shoved a reporter in the clubhouse because the reporter had kept Barry waiting too long. Bonds was officially in his supervillain phase, knocking down any and all relationships of his like the Joker knocks down hospitals. But somehow, the ego that got him to be the first-rate supervillain he was also seemed to be the quality that made him the most elite. Starting with his first Giants season in 1993, he won 5 Gold Gloves, made the All-Star team 6 years in a row, and never once had an OPS under 1,000. For context, an OPS above 900 puts a hitter in elite company, and Bonds exceeded that significantly, 6 times in a row. By 1999, Bill James ranked Bonds the 34th best player of all time, still with a third of his MLB career ahead of him. And all of this was without steroids. But with McGwire and Sosa juiced up and turning the league into a home run derby, it seemed Bonds wanted to join the party. In 1999, Bonds sought out the Krabby Patty muscle growth formula, and like Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk, by 2001 he looked comically different than before. His hat size doubled in size, his jersey went from a 42 to a 52, and his arms looked like tree trunks bigger than most people's legs. With 55 pounds of muscle added since his Pittsburgh days, Bonds' power appeared like he was playing on rookie mode in the show.
I don't care who pitches. When it comes there, I'm gonna hit it out.
By 2001's All-Star break, Bonds already had 39 home runs, yet somehow his second half was even more ridiculous. He slugged .908 after the break and ended the year with a stat line that actually looks like a joke: 73 home runs, .328 batting average, and 177 walks. Bonds was hitting so many home runs in McCovey Cove that his final slugging percentage of .863 would have passed as a stellar OPS, but his actual OPS of 1.379 is simply mythological. After taking the Giants to the 2002 World Series and actually playing well in the postseason for once, Bonds was hitting so elite that it seemed people might actually forget about his controversial baggage. For 1 second in the sunlight, Bonds looked like he might become a good guy and escape his supervillain arc, but then it all came crashing down.
Baseball's all-time home run king is on trial. The federal government's case against Barry Bonds begins with jury selection Monday in San Francisco.
Bonds was suspected of doing steroids for many years, but nothing concrete was ever discovered until news broke that a company he had ties with named Balco had been raided in an investigation for selling steroids. Bonds was finally linked to PEDs officially, and it caused a media firestorm that set his villain arc in motion forever.
You wanted me to jump off the bridge? I finally have jumped.
A few months later, Bonds trainer Greg Anderson was indicted for involvement in steroids, and that only fueled the fire. All anybody wanted to ask Barry was about steroids, and the vision of his baseball empire collapsing around him only made Barry more combative than ever with the media.
There's a lot of people here tonight who helped you get here, but one person who's not able to be here is Greg Anderson. If he happens to be watching TV right now, is there a message you'd like to send out to him?
Why are we in that conversation?
With the steroid era abruptly closing, players such as Roger Clemens, Mark McGwire, and of course Barry Bonds were brought in to testify in front of a grand jury on their involvement with PEDs. Barry contained his roid rage and claimed that he was given substances from his trainer that could have been steroids, but at the time he thought it was flaxseed oil. Nobody was stupid enough to believe this, and since lying under oath is a federal crime, Bonds was later indicted for perjury and had the possibility of facing actual prison time. Bonds was being questioned every day, and with the actual possibility of jail looming, all he could do was deny everything. Did you take steroids? No. Did you lie in front of a grand jury? No, sir. Are you a piece of shit? Absolutely not. He was the biggest target in sports, and it was only made bigger by the fact that he, the game's biggest villain, was also simultaneously inches away from breaking its most sacred record. At the time the steroid scandal and trial were happening, Bonds was putting on perhaps the greatest show the sport had ever seen, and by 2007, he was only a handful of home runs shy of breaking Hank Aaron's career home run record of 755. Hank Aaron is baseball royalty, and to have Barry steal his crown seemed like writing a movie where the bad guys win at the end. But nonetheless, on August 7th, 2007, Barry hit his 756th home run to forever be remembered as the greatest power hitter to ever live.
Deals, and Bonds hits one high, hits it deep, it is out of here! 756!
Despite still having an OPS above 1,000 and a .480 on base percentage at 42 years old, the league had enough of Barry's evil schemes. And to start the 2008 season, all of the MLB teams blackballed him. Barry wanted to play so bad that he agreed to be paid the league minimum, but even that didn't convince anyone. Barry was still playing at the top 1% of all players, but he was such a villain at this point that no team would even sign him for $390,000. Finally, in 2011, Bonds stood trial for his alleged lying back in 2003, and he was convicted for obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 30 days of house arrest and 2 years of probation. But in 2015, after 12 years of court cases, the decision was reversed. The branding of Bonds as public enemy number one was far past permanent though, and he will likely go down as the most controversial, yet also most talented baseball star to ever play the game. While Shohei Ohtani is not a controversial supervillain like Bonds, he may very well be just as talented. Watch our video on the only 6 players to join the 40-40 club to see how Shohei, Barry, and 4 other greats gained admission to one of the most exclusive groups in sports history.